Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full preview for you of an upcoming Tier 8 Polish premium heavy tank. It is the 50TP Prototyp. Now this vehicle comes with a very fetching winged hussars design down the side that you can choose to apply or not, but if you don't care about the way that the tank looks and all of you care about is whether this tank is going to be good or not, spoilers, it's quite similar to the Defender. Anyway, stick around, I've got some Ace Tanker gameplay coming right up after I give you a full rundown of the statistics of this vehicle and let you know whether I think that it is going to be the new flavour of the month. So let's compare the 50TP to a vehicle it is very similar to, and that is the Defender, also known as the Object 252U. And a lot of people will be very happy that the new Polish Tier 8 Heavy comes with a 122mm main armament that packs 440 alpha damage, just like the Defender, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people like that tank. Now that is really big alpha for a Tier 8 vehicle. You're the same as the Moisian, but of course not as quite as big as a tank destroyer, for example, like the Scorpion. But heavy tanks aren't meant to have tank destroyer alpha, right? Now the eagle-eyed of you will already be noticing that the rate of fire of the 50TP is better than that of the Defender, firing a quarter of a round a minute more, which actually gives this vehicle 100 extra damage per minute. And while this is an outrageous damage per minute, it is a significant advantage over the Defender. Just to put things into perspective, right at the low end of Tier 8 Premium Heavy will be things like the T-34 and the Lerva with about 1,600 damage per minute. And then all the way at the other end of the scale, you've got things like the Patriot with 2,000. So this is kind of right in the middle. The vehicle also carries 5 more rounds of ammunition than the Defender, which is very useful because you can take extra high explosive rounds, or you can avoid going into your APCR rounds after you run out of AP in a good matchup. So now on to gun handling. Is this where the 50TP is going to fall back behind the Defender? Well, no, that's not the case. It's got better aim time, but it's still not great at 3 seconds. But for such a large caliber gun, that's by no means terrible, and it's got 0.4 accuracy, which again is better than the Defender, and while it's by no means great, it is very good for such a large alpha damage gun. But the real thing that makes this at least a pleasure for me to play is that it has 10 degrees of gun depression, which is better than that of the Defender. And are we talking about having 10 degrees all around the tank? Well, no, that's not the case. It's actually got 8 degrees of gun depression over the front of the vehicle, ranging from over the tracks here. But as soon as you get past those tracks, you're going to have 10 degrees of gun depression all the way round towards the back of the tank. But keep in mind that the 50TP has only got 4 degrees of gun depression over the back of the vehicle. And so if you track this thing and you kind of get up behind it, keep in mind that it's not going to be able to depress the gun. Now this is a significant advantage over the Defender. It allows the 50TP to work ridge lines like the Soviet heavy tank could only dream of, and I'll be highlighting that more in the gameplay. So next up, mobility, and yeah, things are starting to look very good for the 50TP. It's got the same top speed and reverse speed. It's got a better engine, so it's got a better power to weight ratio with the same ground resistances, so it's actually more mobile than the Defender as well. Okay, so far kind of good news, good news, good news, but there's one thing that I actually forgot to talk about when it comes to the firepower about the 50TP, and that is the penetration. 218 on the standard rounds is not great, but where this vehicle really falls back is when it comes to the premium rounds on this tank. They only have 245mm of penetration, whereas a vehicle like the Defender is packing 265. So keep that in consideration when you're trying to figure out what is going to be the better vehicle, especially in a bad matchup. And it also means that when you fight a 50TP, try to make the most of your armor, because if you use it well, it's way more likely that this vehicle is going to bounce off you than a Defender will. So now on to armor. Surely this vehicle has got to be lightly armored compared to the Defender at least, and this is where it kind of is, kind of isn't. The hull looks absolutely phenomenal on the front, 170mm thick. We're going to have to find out, is that all over the front of the tank? So now onto armor, and this is the real deal breaker for the 50TP, and one of the reasons why the Defender is frankly very overpowered. And immediately we notice that this thing has 170mm of frontal armor. That looks rather scary, but upon closer inspection we find that this vehicle actually only has 110mm of lower plate armor and 110mm of upper plate armor, and the only part of this tank that actually has 170mm of armor is this very flat kind of, I guess, driver's hatch. And so what this means is that with the 50TP, 50TP, the lower plate is actually really bad. It's not very well angled at all, and unless your opponents are right up in your face and aiming down at it, then it's not going to be ricocheting very many rounds. At least against equal and higher tiered opponents. Against lower tiered opponents, there's many tier 6 and tier 7 tanks that are going to be bouncing off here at least half the time or more. But as we can see, the 218mm of penetration that the 50TP has is kind of about a 50-50 to go through this driver's hatch, and so if a 50TP is hiding its lower plate against you like this over a ridge line, you might be able to go through its mid plate if you're a tier 9 tank, or maybe if you're a tier 8 vehicle that's willing to dab the 2 key. Turret armor wise, this vehicle, it's kind of both good and bad news. I mean, this armor's going to work against equal and lower tiered tanks, but as soon as somebody dabs the 2 key or you're having to engage higher tiered vehicles, you're really going to want to wish that you were in a defender, as this tank's armor is just absolutely gargantuan, at least compared to the 50TP, with a way better lower plate and also I'd say better upper hull armor because it doesn't have that driver's weak point. Other things to note about the 50TP is it does have a bit of a hatch, although this thing's quite tricky to shoot, but the top of the tank is overmatchable. It's only 40mm thick, and so that means that if you've got a 121mm caliber gun or larger, you're going to be able to just shoot this thing in the top of the tank and take it out. However, remember, this thing's got 8 degrees of gun depression, so good luck trying to find that top of the turret weak point on this vehicle. One thing that's a bit bizarre about the 50TP is because of this very freaky kind of driver's point in the center of the vehicle. When you turn it to the side, its armor's kind of like hit or miss. Because if you over-angle your lower plate, this becomes good, but unfortunately this whole mid area here becomes a weak point that your enemies can take advantage of. And also the side of the turret of the 50TP is way weaker than that of the Defender. As we can see here, 150, 130 on the side, whereas the Defender is packing like 200. That's what makes the Defender crazy, is that it can kind of just sit there with its turret like this and still ricochet quite reliably. That's something that the 50TP is not going to be able to do, and you must keep the front of your turret towards your opponents. Health-wise, the vehicle is identical to the Defender at 1,500, but there's one advantage that this tank does have over its Soviet rival, and that is 380 meters view range, 30 more than the Defender, which means that this vehicle is going to be able to spot for itself at least at mid ranges. And if you choose to not use vents on this tank and use coated optics instead, as soon as you've got a good crew, you're going to be able to spot for yourself very nicely indeed. A passing mention should be made to the fact that this vehicle actually has really bad radio range, and so in quite a few of the battles that I fought, I wasn't in radio contact with my allies. It seems like a bit of a bizarre thing. Maybe you're actually going to have to take signal boosting on this tank of all vehicles. And that finally, the vehicle has a rather high chance to be set on fire at 20%, and so if this thing does get hit in the engine, it's more likely to go up in smoke than some other tier 8 heavy tanks. So as this is the first Polish heavy in the game, a lot of you might be interested about how many crew members this vehicle has. And it is 4. It has a commander, a gunner, a driver, and a loader. And the commander is also the radio operator in the vehicle, which is undoubtedly going to put a large amount of pressure on him, as you're going to be wanting to take things like recon and situational awareness to be able to boost up the view range as much as you can, unlike other heavies where they have dedicated radio operators. And so what I personally did is I took my Poodle crew and moved the gunner, the driver, and the loader into the 50TP, and then I recruited Gianluigi Buffon from the football game mode into this tank. And of course, this vehicle is going to be a great way to prepare crews for the upcoming Polish tech tree, which I guess is going to be coming in the next month or two now. Anyway, that's quite enough jibber jabber. Let's get stuck into multiple helpings of gameplay in the 50TP. Alright, so we're rolling out on Provence, the Italian map, and you'll notice that when you actually put Gianluigi Buffon into a Polish vehicle, he has Polish national crew voices. So I guess if you want him to have his unique voice acting, make sure you put him in an Italian tank. Alright, so we're going to be advancing as aggressively as we can across towards the west here, and then we're going to hopefully slowly push our way down the southwest corridor to be able to pick apart our opponents. Alright, so immediately get an idea of the mobility of this vehicle. Very good downslope, as most tanks are. Now we're along the flat, we're slowing down to about 25, 26. Alright, now getting up to about 30. That power to weight ratio of just over 14 of this tank, it's okay, but this is by no means a fast vehicle. Also, notice how big the bloom is on the vehicle when we're driving along. 0.24 dispersion, even with a good crew, vertical stabilizers, brothers in arms, it's definitely not got incredible gun handling, and that .4 accuracy will bloom the reticle out even more. Alright, so going up the slope now down to about 20, even along the flat, traverse speed's not too bad. I get spotted, but I'm not really too worried because this vehicle's still packing 90mm of side armor and 80mm of rear armor as well. So even if I get hit in the side or the rear here, I'm not going to worry about that too much. And I've got to press up here because it looks like the enemies are being very aggressive around this corner. Alright, so bouncing some tier 6 tanks there, nothing too meaty coming off the vehicle. And I come around the corner, I get penetrated by a standard round from a T-34-85, but immediately shut him down. 352, a very easy roll to make with this vehicle. You'd have to roll exceptionally low to not be able to take out that vehicle. And there you go, 458 damage done to the back of the Oho, giving him a new exhaust pipe. Not quite able to reload quick enough to be able to put another one into him, and I'm hoping that the PZ-1C is going to be able to finish him off. Now look at this, ladies and gents. This is 10 degrees of gun depression over the side of the tank. I'm easily able to depress the gun over the side to be able to shoot onto the T-29's hull armor. A lot of tanks would have to go and expose themselves up this ridgeline. This is not one of them. But of course, if I want to get a clean shot onto his lower plate, I also have to expose the lower side of my hull as well, as that means the T-29 is able to penetrate us. But we did a substantial amount more to him than he did to us. When I said about like low rolling, by the way, look at that, 330, that actually is a min roll in this vehicle, right? Because that's 440 minus 25%. Yeah. I guess I could roll that low, right? But luckily it wasn't quite that low previously against the Oho. Alright, anyway, so we've managed to clean up that flank. Now it's time to take the fight to the enemy team. This game is still neck and neck. 5 kills apiece, 10 tanks remaining on each side, or at least should I say 7 vehicles, well 7 tanks and 3 self-propelled guns. Alright, A44 aiming. I don't have a gun laying drive on this tank, but keep in mind that I do have a very good crew, and I'm using a premium Polish consumable as well, so that's as good as the aim time is going to get outside of using a gun laying drive. But I really don't know what you're going to get rid of to use a gun laying drive on this tank. You're going to get rid of vents? Well, that seems like kind of removing your arms to be able to run faster. Doesn't work really, does it, when we think about it? Alright, T-2580, we bounce him. That's where the armor on this vehicle does come in handy. We're able to just make mistakes, I guess. Didn't really see that tier 7 American tank destroyer, and the ricochet off is the last thing that they're going to do, as a roll for 492. So that was a much higher roll than that 330 that we had earlier against the T-29, right? Alright, so right now it's all about just pushing in towards the enemy base, well, at least towards their spawn location, and hopefully picking up a few artillery pieces along the way. And this is where having 440 alpha damage is lovely. I'm able to easily one-shot those vehicles. You don't have to worry about low rolling, really, unless we're going to roll as low as we did previously against the T-29. There's our first artillery kill and the third kill of the game. GW Tiger P has 440 hit points. It's going to be a 50-50 to kill him, so I elect to fire at the Hummel instead. I know I'm going to secure the kill on the Hummel, 100% chance to kill that tank. And hopefully I'm going to be able to reload to pick up our third self-propelled gun kill, but that's not going to be the case. And at the end of the game here, we're going to advance. This is where I don't have to worry about just getting caught out in the open in this tank. These vehicles aren't going to have a chance against me. So what's the aim time like on this tank? Well, definitely not very good. 0.4 accuracy isn't really holding us back. Pretty sure my 0.4 accuracy probably goes to about 0.35 with all of the crew skills I have on this vehicle, but still not the best reload, not the best aim time. You're really going to have to micromanage your aim well to be able to, well, maybe not. Maybe you're just going to be able to hotshot tanks like that MT-25. So an all-round solid round for the 50 TP here. 5 kills within 5 minutes and a decent amount of damage and spotting. Alright, so this time we're rolling out on Westfield, and I think you'll know why I'm showing you this replay. I'm showing you this replay because Westfield is one of the best heavy tank maps to spawn on when you don't get focused by artillery and when you importantly have gun depression. Now the 10 degrees of gun depression this vehicle has over the side and the 8 degrees that it has over the front is going to provide me with the flexibility that I need to work this ridgeline like an absolute boss. Now if I was playing in a Defender, I wouldn't really make my way up here. I'd probably try and use these kind of narrow passes here, maybe around here, try and use that 6 degrees of gun depression. But when you've got 4 extra degrees over the side of the vehicle and you see me making sure that I'm holding my gun over the side of the tank to be able to use that full gun depression, I'm just going to be able to crest the ridge here and start the game off by just punishing that IS. Now our armor holds up against the Carnarvon. Looks like our lower plate doesn't work against the Tiger P. And we're going to reload. And hopefully we're going to slam one into the Conway. And whoa, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. 499 damage dealt there. That was a plus 15% damage roll to shut down the Tier 9 British turreted tank destroyer at the start of the game. Now I'm going to work the ridgeline again. Enough gun depression to go through the Tiger P at the top there and hit his weak point. The gun handling on this vehicle, definitely not the best, but still at these kind of ranges you don't need incredible gun handling as long as you drive slowly. And there's the depression over the side of the vehicle. Don't have to expose too much. It's only the artillery that hits us. And actually an IS manages to, I believe, knock out my gun or go through my turret ring there or something. I didn't quite see. Oh, looks like he shot me right through there. That's how he damaged my turret ring. Okay. Didn't like that IS. I'm going to have to deal with you later. Now, one thing I would like to mention about this vehicle from my experiences with it is that it actually takes quite a lot of damage from high explosive rounds. It's quite a compact tank. And it's all about angled armor on this vehicle. And so it's, when you get hit by HEs, some of the weaker plates on top, you seem to take a lot. And losing those 370 hit points, that Tier 9 self-propelled gun, I think is going to be fairly normal. I also lose lots of crew members on this tank. Quite often I've got hit by high explosive rounds and lost 2 crew members at a time in this vehicle. So you might want to consider using a premium medkit on this tank, or just definitely take into consideration that you're going to get a lot of use out of your medkit in this vehicle. Alright, so this is where we want to be, and this is just beautiful. The way that we can work this ridgeline with our depression and not have to expose ourselves. Lots of heavy tanks would have to maybe try and charge in here or try and go and use the wreck of the Tiger P to get the fire going. But no, we can just stay safe, stay pretty, and that means that we don't get noticed, we don't get shot, and we don't have to expose ourselves. And that's what's great about this tank on a ridgeline. And I think that this tank was just way better than what a Defender could do there. Now, of course, we did probably lose a few more hit points than we would have done in the Defender. Our armor would have definitely held up better there in the Soviet version of this tank. I say version of this tank, it's because they're so similar. I mean, they're 2 completely different vehicles, but they kind of feel the same, right? I think the Wargaming definitely wanted to create another Defender to put in this game with this vehicle, but I'll be talking more about that later. But what I'm trying to suggest is that, is it worth making the trade of the armor to be able to get the gun depression? Well, on some maps, certainly not. But on maps like this, that is certainly the case. Alright, so the Object 907 rams the T-54 Mod 1, which allows us to finish him off, picking up our 4th kill of the game. Now, I know there's a T-43 below me that somebody's pinging on the map, and I actually tunnel vision a little bit here. And I decide, shall I shoot the T-43? Yeah, why not? There we go, aiming. Thanks for sitting still for me, buddy. I really appreciate it. Now up to 5 kills and 4,000 damage in the first 4 minutes of this game. And right now, this is not really where you want to be in the 50TP. We were doing so darn well. It's sort of the short to mid ranges. But you know, when we've got our aim in gear, you can still make good use of this 0.4 base accuracy, and the good crew skills are going to buff that up a little bit if you do manage to get them, especially if you do have a poodle crew, or if you just play this vehicle a lot. Once you've got your brothers-in-arms on this tank, you're going to be doing very well. I use vents on this vehicle as well. I'm not using coated optics, and so keep that in mind, that the view range that you actually see here is with just brothers-in-arms and the Smollets. The premium consumable, and I'm just hoping this one goes in. Yes, another kill. You can see I actually did a bit of a flick of the mouse there, as I was kind of thinking maybe I'm going to get my first ever Radley Walters medal in the 50TP. All we need to do is to catch one more shell into the T-71. There he is. I'm not going to wait and try and kill steal. I'm just going to fire when I'm fully aimed. Maybe I would have got an ammo rack or a fire on the enemy tank there, and that would have been a legit Radley Walters medal, right? Nevertheless, 7 kills, 5,200 damage in just over 4.5 minutes. Not bad. But I'm not really getting to show you what I think is one of the key strengths of this tank. Now, while it definitely doesn't have Defender grade armor on the front of the vehicle, it's by no means bad, and so I want to show you one specific engagement of this vehicle that I had where it really hit home that this thing does have decent armor. Alright, so we spawned in on Erlenberg, and I wanted to just go get in the town and be aggressive, and we spotted an OHO in front of us, so we're going to start by putting 493 damage into the lower plate of the OHO there. Now I'm going to go and try and work this window and try and spot out, but I'm thinking, well, before I work the window, why don't I just shoot this OHO again? If I can hit just his cheeks, I should be able to go in. Perfect shot there, 458, and that guy's nearly out the game already. And here we go, Contender, step right up. a cosplay German medium tank pretending to be a Soviet tank, huh? Alright, well I know he's got 200 millimeters of penetration with his standard ammo, bounces one off us. We've already put one round into him. And what I like about the fact that having all of this alpha damage, it allows you to work your armor in between. Look how we're just bullying this guy. Perfect movements here to make sure that we keep our front towards his front and just stopping him from getting our flank, and he wants to get our side armor. We're just putting round after round after round into him here. We push him back over the cliff. He puts one into us, and oh dear, I see the Object 140, and that's nightmare material now. But we just went toe-to-toe with a tier 9 tank. I actually bounce around there off the 140, a bit of a misplay there by me, and I noticed the T55A is going to come get me, so I'm hoping I can bounce the 140. I don't quite. The T55A fluffs his shot. We managed to kill the T55A there, and we go toe-to-toe with a tier 9 medium tank. And it wasn't until the tier 10 medium tank came and backed up the T55A, they even stood a chance. And yeah, of course, the 5% rounds there from the Object 140 definitely helped him out, right? And so you can see what this vehicle is capable of against tanks that have 200 millimeters of penetration like the T55A. And so while tier 8 matchmaking is pretty messed up, and I didn't really show you this tank just grinding through tier 6s and tier 7s, and trust me, I managed a lot of that. I wanted to show you what the frontal kind of face-hugging capacity of the 50TP was, even against higher tier tanks, albeit with low penetration standard ammo. Alright, so let's take a quick look at some of the post-game stats. So this was our round on Provence, a decent amount of credits, a decent amount of experience, but that was for 4 times, a high caliber and a Pascucci's medal for killing 2 self-propelled guns, 3,200 damage, 1,121 base experience points, 10, 10, 10. That's how many shells we fired, direct hits and penetrations. Didn't fire any premium rounds, make 145,000 credits profit, but keep in mind I was using a credit booster at this time. Next up on Westfield, this was a top gun, a tank sniper, and a high caliber. So much for accuracy in World of Tanks, right? When your 0.4 accuracy vehicles can put 14, 14, 14 hits, albeit they weren't the most challenging, and I was kind of try-harding a little bit here to be able to pick up that ace tanker. It's not a bad ace as well, 1,410 base experience points for those 7 kills, and of course a huge amount of profit, 187,000 credits to be exact, and when we take away even the 68,000 that we made from using a credit booster, that's still 120k profit. And even in our Erlenberg game, look at what we managed to achieve, even though we died just 2 minutes and 20 seconds in. Within 2 minutes and 20 seconds, we managed to finish second on experience as we brawled our way into victory against that higher tiered vehicle and make 120,000 credits, again, with a credit booster. So even without that, we're still making about 75,000 credits profit, which is not bad for 2 minutes. And so the 50TP, is it absolutely awesome and crazy good? Well, yes, I think it is. I think the sacrifice that this vehicle makes, at least by losing 10 or 20% of the defender's crazy good armor to be able to gain the gun handling, the rate of fire advantage the vehicle has, and even the slight horsepower to ton ratio and traverse speed and view range advantages that this tank has, as well as the gun depression, makes this better than a defender for me. But I have to admit, during my defender review, I didn't really think the tank was all that, because I personally thought vehicles like the Patriot were way better than the Defender. And there's something that I didn't take into account, and that is that not everybody is kind of playing at a 55, 60, 65% win ratio. A lot of people are very happy if they manage to penetrate 1, 2, or 3 shells in a game. And that's what makes the Defender exceptional, because it has the armor to keep them alive to be able to put those shells in, making it an incredible tank for any player. And that's something that I missed in my original Defender review. Now, do I think the 50TP is going to be absolutely horrific for a below average player? No, I think it's got enough armor, enough alpha, and I think the penetration compared to the Defender is going to be a little bit painful for some people, especially those players who just dab the 2 key and then auto aim. That's not what this tank is. This tank, because it has lower penetration, is definitely going to have knowledge of weak points of the enemy vehicles, and the armor is not quite as idiot-proof as the Defender's is, which you just have to slap in front of a vehicle and hope that they don't pen. You actually have to think about using gun depression and hiding your lower plate and trying to face hug to make people bounce in this tank. But what concerns me about the 50TP is that it has all of the statistics that the good and the exceptional players want to have, like depression, like view range to be able to become an absolute monster on the battlefield. They have enough armor to be able to brush aside the tier 6 and tier 7 tanks, and then they've got the flexibility and the view range to be able to then contest the higher tiered vehicles as well. And I'm just kind of a bit confused because haven't Wargaming admitted that the Defender was just a tank that was far too good? I mean, it's shown completely in the statistics. The Defender and the Object 252U have the highest win ratios of any tier 8 vehicle. Nearly 54.5% for the Defender. And as far as I'm aware, they basically said that they never wanted to sell the Defender again because it is overpowered. So why have they kind of modeled a whole new Defender? And arguably a Defender that, while maybe it's not as quite idiot-proof, is exceptionally good in other areas and arguably better than the Defender for the average and the above-average player. So by the time you're watching this video, the 50TP should be available in the premium shop. However, Wargaming are telling me that it's only going to be available as a pre-sale for people with premium accounts. Why they do that is beyond me. Maybe they just want the amount of them going into the game staggered, or alternatively, maybe they all want you to just have to buy gold to have to buy a premium tank, which is apparently going to cost 40 euros. But there is one good thing that Wargaming are doing with this vehicle, and that is that the actual Winged Hussar preset style is going to be removable. And so if for some reason you don't like this, then you can just remove it, click apply and exit, and then you're going to be able to play the vehicle as normal. And in fact, you can go into the exterior settings and actually put on a load of Polish camouflage as well, if that's what you're interested in. And so while there are certainly some things that Wargaming have done with this tank that I'm not very keen on, that's definitely one of them, because it is going to stop us from having to purchase multiple versions of the same vehicle, like the Liberté and the AMX M449, for example, if you're a tank collector. And a bit of lunacy, right? So whether or not any tank in World of Tanks is worth a 40 euro price tag is obviously going to depend on the person. Are you a student? Are you in a full-time job? Is 40 euros a lot of money to you? I think it's a lot of money to anyone. But my overall opinion of this vehicle is that, at least for me, it is now the best tier 8 premium heavy tank, along with the Patriot. I think that the benefits that this tank has outweighs the Defender for an above average player, but I think that if you're a below average player, you're probably still best to pick up the original Object 252U. And so that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful for you. If it was, please consider giving it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, make sure you give it a thumbs down, and let me know in the comments what you think about the 50TP. Do you think it looks absolutely completely overpowered and Wargaming are making a huge mistake basically by selling another Defender and arguably a kind of better Defender? Or do you think the vehicle looks fine and balanced and doesn't look that good? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.